Today I'm going to try to draw this bell tower structure in Naflio, Greece. And yeah, I guess I'm really not sure what else to call this. And that makes me think about these videos more generally. By not only drawing these things, but also videoing them and subsequently talking about them, I've had to learn some stuff about the things that I choose to draw, which was an unexpected, yet welcome byproduct. However, I can't seem to find any information about this that doesn't just refer to it as a bell or a bell tower. But obviously it's not just a bell that I'm drawing because that's the name of the ringing metal thing attached to that bar. And I definitely don't consider this a tower. If anything, it's more of an arch, but a bell arch doesn't sound right either. What is this? Let me know if you know, because I would like to know. Okay, so I envision this drawing being a quick one when I sat down. The shapes here are pretty clear. There's very little perspective to think about. The lighting is obvious and the texture is broad and simple. So this should have been a cakewalk for me. And I think it was. This didn't take me as long as some of my other recent drawings. And while I have a few gripes with it here and there, all in all, this seems to have worked out. Ironically, I often approach flowers and trees and stuff like that with the same mindset, which is naive of me because those usually take forever. But this was actually as straightforward as I was expecting. In my pocket sketchbook, where I practiced this beforehand, I drew it really small, which isn't usually a good idea because it makes things more confusing when I sit down to draw it for real. But today, at that scale, it helped me forget about all the small details and distill the important stuff down to a handful of simple lines. So if you squint your eyes, you'll notice just how clearly defined the areas of light and shadow are in this reference. And that's what I focused on. This is something with which I've had very little practice, but I focused solely on the shadows, ignoring the areas in the sun and the details that came with them. So I drew one thin line on the right for the dark area of that pillar, and then I drew one thicker curved line, like an upside down J, for the one on the left. I followed that up with two horizontal lines for the underside of what I think would be called the capitals, which might be the name of these little ledges at the top of what I previously called pillars. See, I'm either learning stuff or just confusing myself. Who's to say? And then two more lines at angles for their right sides. Anyway, with just those lines, I already had a pretty good sense of the entire thing, and I just needed to add the rest of the silhouette and any additional texture, which I didn't need to do for this preliminary sketch. When I finally sat down, I had such a solid idea of what needed to be done to achieve the outcome I envisioned, and it really was one of simplicity. Do I wish I could have approached this with the exact same seamless, nonchalant attitude as I had in my pocket sketchbook? Yep, of course I do. But to do that, I probably would have needed something much like a marker or something to get my lines, proportionate to the size of the frame. Anyway, my whole point here was to describe just how simple this subject could be to draw, but also how complicated I could have made it. Rather than focus on the lighting and contrast, I could have gone overboard with figuring out the exact proportions and every last textural detail. I do fall into this a bit, especially because of the dramatic change in scale, which I mentioned. But somewhere along the way, I recalled the importance of that simplicity and ultimately embraced it. Once the general shape was down, I left myself plenty of time to work through the texture, which in my opinion was as significant as the silhouette itself. These are roughly hewn stones that follow a vague pattern, if any, and I wanted to represent that well in the drawing, or at least to the best of my ability. Beyond that, I had some of the contextual elements to consider. The foreground, in my opinion, was more important than the background because it grounds the structure and adds to that rough texture. But the background still has significance, so I didn't want to leave it out entirely. It's only a loose suggestion of the general setting, but still, I'm glad it's there. So yeah, while this one was definitely more straightforward than some recent drawings, I think it still holds on to that suggestion of detail and whatnot that I talk about. And I'm particularly happy with the way the lighting worked out, even though it's admittedly incredibly simple. This is the type of subject that I think I could get pretty close to accurately replicating on paper if I had like an hour to sit with it. I feel like I understand everything that's going on here, and time is the only thing really holding me back. But that's not what I want out of this. I just want to be able to sit down and draw what I see with reasonable accuracy and not have it take forever. I want to keep improving my understanding of a scene and how to draw it so that it takes me, less and less time over time to achieve roughly what I'm after. There's obviously a limit to that, but I'm not anywhere close to it at this stage, so I'm just going to keep pushing. Anyway, I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.